There's something I missed in the last video that I wanted to bring up, and it is that your validate function has a validation type. This comes in, you're like, what is validation type? Why does it matter to my validate? If we're doing group validations, for instance, because this is where this was important, is group validations, you might not want to error on the date field until somebody, not even on change, you might want to error differently on change versus on submission. On submission, you might want to actually check that the date is correct. But on change, if somebody's just changing values, you might want to just make sure that the values exist. This kind of check would be field validation, whatever type equals change. Or actually what I would have is I would have validation types dot change, something like that. So you don't have to look at all this. I guess it's too much, but I'll just leave it in this window. You could check to see the date fields. You could check to see if they don't exist or they exist on change. But when you submit the form, you might want to now actually do a different kind of check. And you might have another if there. And this one would be like, you would do this on submit. And then you would do something else here, some logic here. I don't know what it's going to be. And that should be an ampersand. Oh my gosh. Look at me write my code. I know this is probably confusing to people because I'm writing code incorrectly. But this is my previous video of how the API works. It's not the video of like how you actually use it because I haven't built it. Validation type equals change, and you don't have a value from one of these fields. Go ahead and error that your date is wrong, and error that on the date warning field, which doesn't actually exist, but we created it for error purposes. And then also put the month, day, and year in an errored state. Although if you submit the form, you're going to come down here and do this, and you might have some different logic here that we don't know what it is. And when that runs, then you might return some other issue stuff. You might say the year is wrong or something like that. And that's where you get interesting because now you can have multiple errors for the same field. You can say the year, it's actually the day cannot exist in that year. The day is invalid for that year. You could do that. And you could also return another message saying your date is wrong. If you want these in order, you would do them like that. But you can display multiple error messages for the same field and then also black out all these, but you don't even have to, right? If the day is the only thing that's wrong for a given year, then we would just do this. The day itself, the field for day is so small, we wouldn't display an error message there. It could be larger, but most places I've seen, the day field is like very small. It's enough to contain a couple characters. You don't want to display the error message there. You want it in a different spot, especially in this case where we have 3 fields for the month, day, and year. We have 3 fields. We have a month, a day, and a year, and we have an error field. And the error field is not considered a registered field because we don't have it. We're not using OneForm field on it. We're using something custom I created, but basically you would have to write whatever this field error is, but there would be a hook you can use to pass in a name, and then it will subscribe to errors for that field that you're creating. You can think of this as a field. This is technically a field in OneForm. If I put an input on it, I could get access to this field. I'm just going to use it for warnings only. And honestly, it should be called date fields.date warning, something like that, because it's namespace to this component. And that makes it a little bit more that makes it easier to manage. Okay. That is my short video on how you can use a validation type to change the different kind of validation you do based on the type of validation. You can pass in a validation here. If you have change, you also have submit. And this might not be change then. This might be validation types dot change, something like that. So it matches what you would expect to see in here. You'll always have submit though. If you never submit your form, no big deal, then it won't validate on submit, but it will always do submission validation. The only things that are different are like change and blur and stuff like that. Right now it's just change. That's my opinionated way of doing it, that you don't really need blur validation because there's this whole concept of field being touched and fields get touched on blur. That's how that works. Cool. Done with that.